Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you everyone for joining us for our professional development session for February. We are excited to have Mark Fromson here to give us some fantastic insight on becoming a successful agency subcontractor. My name is Danny Durand. I'm the VP of Member Success for Communo. Love to have these sessions to really provide some insights from, we will say, dozens of years from experts such as Mark. And Mark actually has a fantastic intro slide. So without further ado, Mark, I will leave the stage to you, and do want to encourage anyone to type questions as Mark presents. I will then collect the questions at the end of the presentation and read them back for Mark to respond to and provide some further insight with. But otherwise, Mark, I leave you the stage.
Great. Well, welcome everyone. I'm happy to be here and happy to try to share some nuggets of and kernels of wisdom for you all in your quest, your freelance quest, and your career as well. So I'm going to be presenting today on how to freelance for agencies and how to become a successful agency subcontractor. And I'm just going to start with a little intro about myself and try to give you some context of where I've been in my career and how I've managed to move through and become a potential expert in this area. So right now, I am currently the VP of Product Services at Communo. I was the former co-founder and CEO of localsolo.com, which was a freelance marketplace for high-end local freelancers. I'll tell you a bit more about that in a minute. Throughout my career, I've been a contract digital project manager and user experience architect. I've had about 23 years agency experience in the US and Canada. Started my career in the US in Seattle in 1996 with one of Seattle's first web design companies called Cosmix. And it then got bought by a big conglomerate called US Web, and we got merged and became the Seattle office of US Web. At the time, it was the largest web development company in the world. It had 53 offices worldwide. And I ended my tenure there as a strategy consultant for the Seattle office. Then I moved to San Diego, was with an agency down there for about a year and a half. Then the .bomb hit and everybody in San Diego got laid off all at once. And I lost my work visa and so decided to move back to Toronto. So I gave Toronto a try. I worked in Toronto full-time at an agency called Blue Spark. Did a lot of great projects there. And then decided the big city wasn't for me and I loved the West Coast. So I moved back to over to Vancouver, where I am now. And I started freelancing right away, pretty much just to pay the bills as I was looking for work. And then by the time I got some job offers, because no one knew me in Vancouver, the freelancing kind of just took over. And so it was just like that I became a freelancer, and from then on up until just this year was a full-time freelancer. I decided that as a freelancer I should open my own agency. So I've owned 2 boutique agencies, one as an individual and one with a single biz partner. I'll tell you a bit more about that in a minute. I've worked on a lot of client projects. Some of the bigger clients, Starbucks, Sony, Nike, Adobe, Microsoft, Disney, and a few others. It's all of those big clients though have been through agencies. So it's very rare that a single freelancer would get a client like that on their own, unless they were working on site in the office. So most of those have been as an agency subcontractor getting access to those. Going into the next slide. So I'm going to go over the 5 main types of freelancing. So there's the on-site client contract. So for example, that would be if TELUS decided to hire you for 40 hours a week for 4 months. And you had to go into TELUS's office and you worked on one of TELUS's teams, and you were basically an on-site contractor. An off-site client contract would be if TELUS hired you, but you could work from home. So you might have to go in for meetings, but you're still employed by them on a contract basis, and you're just not working in office. A direct client project is if TELUS hired you to do something specific, like a logo project, or if the local pizza shop hired you to do a website, or if a local association hired you to do some brand work for them. So anything that comes direct to you, where you're working direct for the client, is a direct client project. And then there's the agency projects. So an on-site agency subcontract is when you work for the agency and you're in their offices working hand in hand with their team, just like a regular employee would, but you're on contract and it's only temporary. An off-site agency subcontract is when you're working from home, but you're part of an agency team. All right. So what's the best way out of all these ways? The most common but highly unstable is the direct client projects. And when you start freelancing, a lot of what people think is that this is their only option. You know, hey, I'm a freelance graphic designer, I'm a freelance developer, I need to go out there and get direct client projects. And often they just don't know where to start because it's very hard to build up a direct client project base. But it's great for your portfolio, and it's always a good source to keep yourself out there and go direct when you can. Typically, the money is a little bit better. You can charge a little bit higher rate than if you were working potentially for a client or an agency. But it's really unstable. It's hard to get those clients. You never know if you don't have a sales channel. You never know where they're coming from, and you're always worried when is the next one going to come, and how am I going to get those projects. So to maximize stability, being on site, either at the client side or the agency, is the best, because what that usually means when you're on site is you're full-time. So somebody will hire you for, say, a 4-month or a 5-month full-time contract. They'll require you to come in the office just like an employee would, but you're making a higher rate, and it's just temporary. So if you can string together some on-site client contracts in a year, you're going to be maximizing your income, because you're going to be charging your hourly rate times 40 hours a week for week after week after week. It's very hard doing direct client projects to get that kind of stability. So if you do have a lot of skills and you want to stay a contractor, and your skills are attractive to agencies or to other companies to slot into their teams, and you don't mind working in their offices, then this is the best, most stable contractor situation that you can get in. And it can be pretty lucrative as well. If you want to learn the most and do the most cutting edge work for an agency. Typically, they're the ones pushing the envelope when it comes to design, UX, when it comes to branding, when it comes to development and using technical tools. You'll never learn as much on a client contract, direct client contract, or doing direct client project work as you will when you're working in an agency subcontract. Typically, agencies are just full of really, really smart people. They're always pushing the boundaries. They're always got new processes and new tools that they're working and exploring in. And you're just working alongside a lot of really smart people. And so you do learn a lot, and you're doing the most cutting edge work when you work for agencies. If you want to maximize your income, like I always do, then do all 5. There were some periods in a year where I had all 5 of these, some of them going simultaneously. So sometimes I'd be on site at an agency. I'd also be slyly doing some work for another agency. I'd have a couple direct client projects on the go, using some other freelancers to do them. And sometimes even I had two half-time on-site contracts. So in the morning I would go to one company, and then in the afternoon I would go and sit on-site at another company. So as long as you don't have any non-competes going on where they prohibit you from doing other work while you're working for them, then you're perfectly free to do all 5 at once. So when you're negotiating your contracts, and you're worried about this because you have other clients, and make sure you put a clause in your contract that you're allowed to do work for other clients while you're working for them. All right, so back to the meat of the presentation. How do I get agency work? And believe it or not, it's a lot easier to get agency work than direct client work. And the reason is mainly because it's easy to find out who all the agencies are in town and who you want to work for. And especially now that you're part of Camino, because Camino gives you the method to be able to find out who all those agencies are. So I'll just go through a lot of the things that I do to make myself attractive to agencies. First thing is to create a personal brand, or a company brand that emphasizes you as an individual. So this is a real stickler point that I see a lot of freelancers decide that they want to make themselves look more important by creating a brand that doesn't have any indication that there's one person behind the company. That may work better for some direct clients where you're kind of trying to portray yourself as a bigger company or a bigger entity than you are to land that direct client contract. But if you're going on site and doing a client contract on site and slotting into their team, or you're slotting into an agency team, they do not want to know about your bigger agency entity. All they want to know about is you. So I decided that I was just going to do my own personal brand. And I got my direct clients as well this way because they really had a lot of visibility into who it was that they were hiring. So I was very transparent with my direct clients that I was an individual, that I had a network of other people that I brought in on client projects. And by doing this, you're just providing a lot of clarity to the hiring managers at the agency or the direct client that, hey, here's a person. I need to find a person to slot into my team. This person is representing themselves as an individual, not a big company that doesn't even show their staff. So if you want to work subcontract for agencies and you're an individual, then my advice is to portray yourself as an individual and not a general larger entity. If you do have a general larger entity and that's going well, you could do a sub-site that it just emphasizes your own, more like a resume site. And you could keep the agency going for direct client work. And then when it comes to slotting in for as a subcontractor, then you could send them your individual website or resume page. So there's no reason why you can't have both entities going at the same time. So that's a question I get a lot. It's a little bit more work to set up your sites and everything like that, but it's worth it. So here's something that I always advise, and I see people making this mistake over and over and over again. Call yourself the titles that agencies want you to be when you are on their team. I see all sorts of people on LinkedIn calling themselves ninjas, gurus, mavens, badasses, creative technologists. No one knows what a creative technologist is. There's not a single agency really that has probably a creative technologist on their staff. If they do, it's kind of kitschy and it's very rare. So if an agency is looking to hire you, they already know the role that they want. And if you call yourself the role that they want, immediately that gives you a leg up on getting that role, because the hiring person is going to look at your resume or your website. They're looking for a React developer, and they go to your website and it's like, hi, I'm a React developer. Right away, they're like, great, that's exactly what I'm looking for. If you're like, I'm a developer, they may be like, oh, I have to dig to find out what the specialty skills are. And maybe you don't even, show them what skills you are, and then they'll just move on to the next person that has a better representation of what they are. The same with all the other roles. Typically agency roles are pretty clear. You can go on the website of the agency and look at who they're hiring for, or you can look at their team page and look at the titles that they show. And if you're going for a role at that agency, you're going to want to figure out what role they're hiring for, and then represent yourself as that role to the agency, specifically the person hiring for the role. All right. So be a unicorn to maximize your earnings. So I have 3 main skills: digital project manager, user experience architect, and functional analyst. I paid my friend Vince to do these little caricatures of myself, and I have them on my website. And what this allows me to do is I can slot into any of those 3 roles on a client contract. and it's very clear on my website that I do these 3 things. Sometimes I play more than one role on a project, and then I can double bill. So if an agency is hiring for a project and they have both the digital PM and the UX architect slot open, I've managed to sell myself as doing both. My hours double on the project, and I get to do both roles. It makes the project more interesting for me as well. So more money, more interesting. So if you are at a professional level on multiple different roles, then do advertise that you can slot in professionally on those roles. But be specific. Don't be very general. Have a killer online portfolio. So this is very important, obviously, for a designer to be able to show their work and prove to the hirer that they have that professional quality. But you know, I see a lot of other skills making the mistake of not having a portfolio and thinking it's only for designers. So I'm a project manager. I don't do any design work, yet my portfolio looks like a designer's portfolio. And that's because I was the project manager on all these projects. And so if you're a developer, or if you're a copywriter, or if you're a business analyst, if you worked on a project, get the screenshots for that project, put it up on your website. It doesn't matter that you didn't do the design work. What matters is that you indicate that what role you played for those projects. So every single project that you play a role on, you should be championing that project on your website and in your portfolio. And try to get the graphics from the designer, or do nice screenshots and present them nicely. And you know, I have a lot of developers say, well, yeah, I didn't do the design work. You know, how can should I really be allowed to present that work on my portfolio? And the answer is yes, unless you have a contract specifically with an agency that says you cannot show this client work, then you are free to tout the work however you like. And I always, you know, go by the old adage, you know, ask for forgiveness later. Don't be asking these agencies, unless it's specifically in the contract you can't do it, don't ask them if you can do it. Just do it. I've only ever had once in my entire career somebody ask me to take something down. But if I had asked, then you have to go through all the channels, and it goes up the ladder, and they say no for no reason. And then you're like, oh, great, now I can't use this. But if you just put it up, chances are no one from that company is gonna notice. And even if they do, they're not gonna bother asking you to take it down unless there's some big issue with the company having that work online. So yeah, so if you're a developer and you've been working for 3 or 4 years, I wanna see you having the same similar screenshot portfolio as I do. There's no excuse for not having that, depending on what your role is. All right, know your tools. If you're slotting in at an agency and they use 6, 7 different tools at their agency, and you have no idea what they are or how to use them, you're at a disadvantage from day one. So here's just all the tools that I used in one particular year, last year. I just went back and remembered, and I was like, oh yeah, I had to dive into this and I had to use that. Now, as a PM, I'm using a lot more tools generally than you guys would if you're a copywriter, especially, or if you're a developer. You're going to have a completely different set of tools that you use. But it's important to at least have those tools, the most general ones for your skill set. Know them, have licenses to them already in some cases, especially for some of the coding tools and for some of the design tools. You don't want to necessarily have to ask the agency, hey, can you pay for my InVision subscription? They're going to expect you to have InVision. They're going to expect you to have Sketch and Photoshop. Don't go into an agency and just expect them to drop all this money on buying you licenses for stuff. If you're a consultant, if you're a freelancer, it's your responsibility for the most part to pay for the tools, a lot of the tools that you need to use individually. Now, if they're on a stack like Asana or Slack, you don't have to pay for those. They'll just onboard you as a user into their system. So if it's something where you need to go on their time tracking tool, or you need to use their bug tracking software, that's the kind of thing where you don't need to license yourself. They'll just onboard you as a user if they want you to use that system. But it's always great if you can, when you're going in for an interview, if you know someone there, ask them what their tool stack is. Find out what tools are that the agency is using, so that when you interview, you can say, hey, I know that you use this tool stack. I'm up to speed on all those tools. And right out of the box, that will give you a leg up on getting that contract with the agency. All right. So it's good to understand the agency scene. There's all different types of agencies. There are big integrated advertising agencies that have that are all across the world, like Ogilvy and Mather or DDB. There's big digital agencies that are like Blast Radius, or there's medium-sized ad and marketing agencies, medium-sized digital agencies. Those are typically, there's like they might have one office, or they might have 2 offices, max 3. Usually there's 20 to 40 people in each office for those medium-sized ones. Then there's the boutique ones, which is like 15, 10 people minus. And there's just probably 100 of them in each city that you all live in. And there's all different kinds. There's digital and mobile, social media marketing, there's branding, creative. And then there's service-oriented startups as well. You can always slot in on a contract at a startup. And in some cases, you're doing a very similar work than you would at an agency. So yeah, understand the market understand and try to find out who are all the agencies that in your city that you want to work for. So once you know the agencies, what do you do? Well, it's pretty simple. It's just all about getting to know the people. So follow the agencies' social media pages, be on their newsletters. Often they hold events, and you can show up at their events. Go to meetups and networking events. Meetups are super, super important these days for your area of expertise, or even for getting to know other people in different skill sets that work at agencies. There's always great meetup groups in town. I started the digital project management meetup. That's a great one because the agency PM is a great friend to have if you're an agency freelancer. So we see a lot of copywriters, developers, and designers coming to our digital project management meetups, mainly to network and to meet all of the DPMs around town, because they're the ones who are like, hey, I have a role open in my project and everybody's full up. How am I going to fill this role? And if they know you and they trust you, they may suggest you into the resource manager or the agency owner or the creative director or the technical director. And that's how you can get your foot in the door, is by knowing those people. Go to individual agency parties. So get on their mailing list, like I said, and excuse me, show up at their parties. If you're not a partier, you don't have to drink. Often I don't drink at these events. I just go and have a club soda or whatever, and and do my networking and do the rounds and get to know people. And no, this is really important. Get to know the directors at every agency. They're the ones who ultimately hire you. So if you're a director, if you're a developer and you're trying to get in at an agency, the technical director, the dev lead at the agency, is the one who's really going to give you the thumbs up or the thumbs down. Conversely, if you're a designer, it's the creative director that's going to be looking at your work and deciding to hire you. So get to know who the directors are at the agency, and try to get to know them. Same thing for all the skill sets. Find your tribe and embrace them all. So, if you're a React developer, go to the React development meetup. If you're a designer, find the creative groups like Creative Pulse in town, or Creative Mornings, and go to those events. Showing up at those events is the best way to kind of announce yourself to the whole community. And if you're never at those events and you're only at home, then it's very hard to get yourself kind of discovered by all the people in town. Patricia does a really good job at that. She lives a little bit out of town, but she's always making the effort to come in town and to go to all the events and to talk to everyone, and that's great. So don't limit yourself to your own city. You can look for remote agencies. So a lot of agencies these days are distributed, and they will hire remote workers. So you absolutely do not have to only work for agencies in your own city. If you're looking for an off-site agency subcontract, then these agencies hire people from all over North America. And they don't care where you live. You can communicate in Slack and in email and through the collaboration tools that they have. And everybody in the team is distributed. We even have some agencies in town like MetaLab where they're a big, well-known agency. Most of the time, all their workers work from home. They come into the office once in a while or when there's big meetings, but other than that, they're at home. So more and more people are going towards that kind of model. More and more agencies are. So it definitely opens up the whole agency landscape for you to work for. Mostly with the remote agencies, the big, large agencies are still kind of caught in that old way of doing things where they want people in office. So if you're looking to work for remote, don't go after the big agencies in another city. Go after the smaller agencies that have a distributed workforce. In your own city, you can go after the bigger agencies because they want you on site. And if you go on site, that's a big plus for them. So in your own city, feel free to go after the large agencies. So once you've kind of identified them all, make and execute your agency hit list. So identify the agencies you want to work for, identify who at that agency are the resource decision makers and the director who leads the department you'd like to slot into. Connect with them on Communo and LinkedIn. Send them your new work, compliment their work, take them out for lunch, let them know you want to work with them. But it's very important to be subtle and cool, not in your face. So, I see a lot of people, they take this a little bit too literally and they just start hammering all these people with a big mass mailing, and it just annoys everyone. So really, you just have to kind of be subtle. I know it's hard to figure out what's subtle and what's too subtle, but just try to be cool. If you know that there's a creative director in an agency and you really want to work there, the best thing to do is try to talk to them in person at an event. The next best thing would be to connect with them on LinkedIn. And instead of writing them an email saying, hey, I love you, I really want to work for you, like right out of the bat, just build it up over time. Basically drop them a line and say, hey, I really love the work you did on this client recently. And I want to know how you did this, something like that. And then, keep the conversation going. And then, maybe on the fourth conversation, you might say, hey, I've done some new work recently. I'm wondering if you would take a look at it. I'd love your opinion. And, over the course of time, you'll develop a relationship with that person. And then, if they ask you, hey, what do? You can say, hey, I'm a freelancer. I work for agencies. Don't just jump in and say, I want to work for you. Just leave it at that. And then, if they like your work and you've been interacting with them, the next time they need someone, they may remember you and they'll be like, oh, okay, Jennifer, I remember, she sent me some cool stuff she did in WordPress that really was good. And hey, maybe we should call her and see if she's available for a contract. And that's kind of how things happen. They don't happen because you emailed every single agency person all in one day with a mass email. That's just not the way to go about it. I know it's more work and you want to do some sort of marketing automation, but it's still the real world. You're still dealing with people. And in the end, it's the people who make the decisions, and people hire who they like and whose work that they respect. And if you spend some time to do this and doing it properly, then that's how you're going to break in. So another thing that you can do is to be a connector. So grow your own network of freelancers and agency partners, and Communo is a great way to do that, obviously. So you can come to an agency with a Rolodex of awesome. You're not just a project team member, you become, a de facto recruiter for that agency. So, you may land in an agency and and you realize that there's another role that they need, and you have a friend that is perfect for it and is free. If you refer that friend in, the agency is going to love you for it, and your friend's going to love you for it as well. So karma in freelancing is huge. When you're busy as well, you can refer in your friends. Anybody at an agency who's looking for a body, like a front-end developer, calls you and finds out you're busy, it's just one more strike on their list. But if you say, hey, but I know my friend who might be interested in this contract, then you're helping out the person at the agency looking for that body. So it always is great for karma all the way around. And then your freelancer friends will bring you in on projects as well. So it's just a great circle. You also have people to team up with when your direct clients have needs that outstrip your skill set, which is, obviously one of the main principles that Camino is founded on. So when you get a direct client, you can basically tell them, hey, I'm part of the Camino network. I have any kind of type of skill that you need, and I can slot in anybody and help manage them for the work that you need done. So I'm just going to wrap up some things to keep in mind. Obviously have that killer portfolio. Connect with people on Camino and on LinkedIn. Always be positive. That's an important thing. People like to work with people that they like, and if you're kind of a negative person and you're like, oh, hey, I don't know if I can do that contract, let me get back to you, or hey, that contract sounds great, but I don't know if I really want to come into your office, or any kind of like negativity like that, like, oh, hey, that's great, but I think I might have to double my rate because you want it really quickly. All that kind of stuff is just going to turn off people who want to hire you. So if you're just always positive, even if you're not sure you can take on the project, just be positive and say, hey, I'll get back to you. I'll take a good look at it. Thanks for the opportunity. And then if you have to turn it down, just turn it down and try to offer them some alternatives. You want to make the agency feel like you are their, that they are your top priority. So I've had some, contractors, when I'm at an agency and I'm trying to find some people, basically, I'll email someone and they'll be like, yeah, well, I've got a really important client project that I'm working on right now, and I think I could fit you in, but I'm just not sure. And then and you're like, well, wow, I don't need to know about your other client. I don't need to know that they're important. I want to know that I'm important and that you want to do this work for me. So it's a subtle thing, but it is important that that whenever an agency calls you, you want to make the person on the other end there feel like that they're your top priority. This is important. Provide a fair market hourly rate or flat bid. Don't go in with a high bid to try to see if they'll bite. Everybody knows what they want to pay and what a fair market rate is for the most part. Nobody in the agency world is a rube that is going to double pay for your services. So you're going to want to find out what the going rate is for your skill. You're going to want to negotiate with them, but come in with a fair price. If you want to go a tiny bit high, you can, but don't overinflate it because they'll just right away it'll be a turnoff for them. So that's some good advice there. When it's an agency, usually they've got, at least the bigger agencies specifically, already have 30-day net payment terms for everyone. So, and this is with the larger clients as well. So some freelancers I see, they've read online that they've been screwed over a few times and they're like, I want payment up front. Well, if it's a bigger company, they're just not going to do that. They have their processes. It's pretty sure that they're going to pay you if you sign a contract. So always accept their payment terms. If it's an individual client, a small client, yeah, get money up front because you never know what a small client is going to do. They could bail halfway through the project, of course. But if it's a bigger agency and they want you to subcontract, they're just going to pay you the way that they pay everyone else. So don't come in with any crazy demands that are going to be gonna make them try to change their payment policy just for you. Yeah, so be plug and play. You're gonna want to be able to sit down and be able to do the work right away the first day. Know and have all the tools like I mentioned before. Here's an important one. Be Switzerland. Don't get involved in the company gossip. I know one particular friend of mine. They just cannot stop themselves from getting in deep with the company and taking sides and gossiping and trying to play people off one another. And that's just a recipe to never get hired again. It doesn't matter if you do great work and you've fulfilled on the project. If you've created some sort of drama in the company, you will not get invited back. So try to stay above that. Don't get involved in the company gossip. You're only there to do a job. Be friends, make friends with people, but don't try not to take sides. Help the agency find talent as well. Like I said in the last slide, make friends, have fun, and above all, do great work. if you do great work and there's nothing but positiveness around you, then you will get hired back again and again and again. And that is it. Thanks very much for everyone for attending.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark. That's really great. And certainly both your and my experiences come from totally different sides of the table, and it was really insightful. As people are thinking about questions, so certainly take some time to type in any questions you might have. There are a few that have popped up that maybe you can provide some further tips on. A few members are wondering if you have any other tips to how do you really identify what your fair market rate is for your specific skill set? Is there places you go to or people you can talk to or insight you can give them to get some like a baseline for that?
Yeah, the best thing to do is to go to the meetups for your own particular skill and get to know the people who offer the same service that you do. Look at their experience and ask them, basically. So get some friends in the industry and say, hey, what are the going rates in Vancouver for an intermediate graphic designer? You can ask the digital project managers as well. You can also ask the client. You can basically say, hey, for my skills, when they ask what your rate is, you say, hey, well, what is the rate that you're expecting for me? What would get me this job? And if they say something that is acceptable to you, then great. If they say something that's too low, then you can counter and say, hey, that's just a little low for what I normally take. How about an extra $5 an hour? So there's all sorts of ways. There's all sorts of online surveys and rate calculators. Maybe the ones in New York where things is such a big city that they standardize on some rates, or in London, England, there's standard rates for every skill. But in other cities, they just don't apply. So if you're in a big city, there's typically, you can find online freelance rate calculators, or you can ask the freelance recruiting companies. Say in London, everybody is freelance in London and they get day rates. So in London, it's different. If you're in Vancouver or if you're in Calgary, the best thing to do is ask your friends first and find out what they charge. And if someone charges $80 an hour and they have 5 years experience on you, you're probably going to want to go in at 60 or maybe even 55. And it all depends on what's going to make you happy as well. So if you're willing to take a lower rate, then there's the higher chance you're going to get the job. Don't go in too low though, because sometimes going in too low for your skill automatically indicates that you don't know the scene. So if you're an intermediate graphic designer and you're going in at $20 an hour, right away the hiring manager is going to think something's up. Like, why is this person so low? So, yeah.
We do have another question. What the question is let's say you have an interesting and effective yet unusual solution to approaching certain kinds of client work, and you think that would work really great for them. Is there any tips you have on helping them see your way of thinking and take that jump to test a project with you, or tips on getting them to hear you out?
Yeah, I mean, you could always do some sort of early pro bono work, for them. Say, hey, here's a snippet of something that I've done that I think is going to work really well. Put it online on Squarespace or something, or send it to them in a PDF and say, hey, here's some early work I've done for you. I hope it illustrates my point, and I hope that we can get on the phone and talk more about it. But don't do too much though. Don't do the whole project for free.
Of course. Troy did offer, for anybody who hasn't seen in the chat box, that he's found some decent insight on Reddit on some fair market rates. So definitely, within the Communo community, there's a lot of people that you can reach out to and have conversations with. We also have the Slack channel. Definitely reach out to people and have again the one-on-one conversation to understand pricing tied on experience level, how long you've been doing it is valuable. I do want to say, Mark, I think what was really great to share with the community, and I talk to everyone as part of being VP of Member Success when they join, the value of identifying a personal brand and being careful what kind of vernacular you use for titles. Because again, both can really give a great impression or the wrong impression. So it is worthy of spending some time to really think about how you want to present yourself. I think that was really great insight for everyone.
Great, yeah. One thing I didn't mention, is if you happen to be part of an agency that serves other agencies, which is a big thing in Communo, just the same as if you were representing yourself for as a personal brand, you can represent yourself as an agency who does work for agencies. So we've got, I know Rachel is part of a technical company that specializes in working with agencies, and they do a great job of promoting that particular niche on their website. And that's exactly what the bigger agencies want to see when they go to the website and look at it. They want to know that you are experienced in working with them and that you specialize in that kind of thing. So it's the same thing as if you're an individual freelancer or if you're a smaller company that wants to work with larger agencies.
Sweet. I do have another question here from Amy. Curious to hear why you think creatives should agree to a 30-day payment term, because most of them don't have a big cash reserve like an agency would, and they need to get paid when they work. Most have their own payment terms. Do you find that there's a happy medium with that?
I don't. If it's a direct client, you can ask for any payment terms you like. And I encourage you to get paid upfront, a portion of the contract. But if it's an established company, typically they will have the same payment terms for every contractor that they bring on board. And if you're asking them to break from that, you're asking them to do you a personal favor. That may work. You can give it a try. But when the person is negotiating for your services and they're giving you, say, a copywriter contract, and they're say that they're the head of content for the agency, they're just going to be like, yeah, talk to invoicing about your payment. And if you're telling invoicing, hey, I need money up front, and invoicing has never done that before, then they have to go to the boss and back to the person, the content, and say, hey, this freelancer is wanting upfront money. And then the owner is going to be like, well, I've never even worked with them before. Why would I give them money upfront, before they've done their work? That's just not what we do. We pay 30-day net, and that's our policy. So it just depends on if you want to challenge that or not. It's at your risk. You may feel that you really want to challenge it, and that's your right. And if you do challenge it and they agree, then great. But there's always a good chance that they're not going to agree, and that they're just going to think that it's a negative against you because you're an unknown and you're asking them to do something different.
Awesome. Great advice. Another question from Jennifer. Do you feel it's worthwhile to submit a printed portfolio or an introduction package to agencies?
Yeah, absolutely. In part of the community recruiting, I'm talking to a lot of designers and copywriters, and some of them just say, hey, yeah, I'm interested in this job. Go ahead and send them my contact info. And if they're interested, they can look at my website and contact me. And, you got to know that when you're doing that, somebody else is saying, great, I really want this job, Mark. Can I get you a cover letter and a PDF portfolio to send over to them? What's the client name? Can I personalize it? And, I'm giving both of those to the agency. And, the person who's opening up that email is going to see the branded cover letter and portfolio, and then they're just going to see a website that they have to go to. They know already that the person who's giving the cover letter and portfolio is putting more of an effort into it, and they can forward that on to other people in the company. Whereas if it's just a website link, you're asking them to do all the work. You're asking them to go to your site, figure out if they want to work for you, dive in and dig into your website and see if what they want you for is exactly a skill that you have. But if you know ahead of time that the agency, if you can speak to the exact job post and write that cover letter and include work samples that speak to that, you're a leg up already.
Fantastic. Another great question. Being a unicorn, John O asks, are there particular roles that are especially in demand right now, in your opinion?
Yeah, every agency role is in demand. So it depends on if you're technical or what area you're at. Obviously, if you're a developer, you're going to want to be targeting some of the more advanced tools these days that agencies have a hard time finding skills for. So there's always a million posts for React developers. There's always a million opportunities for .NET developers. Excuse me, there's just not a whole lot of React and .NET developers out there. Conversely, if you're a content strategist, but you want to maximize your income, you might also, want to fall back on your long form content writing. service instead of just being a content strategist, because one-third of the time the agency might want to contract a content strategist, but the other 2/3 they just want a long-form copywriter. So if you're both, then you can slot into all the contracts.
Great.
Same thing with design.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jay is asking for any tips for working from home, having a good, healthy setup, or balancing home stresses versus work stresses.
Yeah. Everybody's different. Everybody has some people have a hard time staying focused at home. Some people really like working from home. I find that a big monitor helps at home. Working on a small laptop for me is quite challenging. I get more done on a bigger monitor at home. Taking regular breaks, going out for lunch, making sure that you stand up. One of the great things about working from home is, you can start work at 6 in the morning, get a couple hours of work done with your coffee, and then take 2 or 3 hours off in the afternoon and go do something else. So you don't want to, one thing you want to get out of the habit of doing is working too much from home. It's like starting at 6 and ending at 6 and being at your desk, chained to your desk the whole time. If you're doing that, hopefully you're making a lot of money, but you're also probably burning yourself out.
Yeah, I think there's value too, especially as Communo grows, but certainly in any local community, you're likely going to be able to tap into maybe a co-working space. So like you said, Mark, you might be, an early riser and get a few things done, and you still want to be productive. You can take those extra couple of hours and just go to a co-working space and connect with people that are there and understand what they're working on, and maybe a way to find a connection to strengthen and nurture a relationship that can be reciprocal down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're doing, off-site client contracts, but you prefer to be in like a Communo compound or a WeWork space, it's beneficial. You can have meetings there. You get to know the people around you. You get to know other people. You may make some work connections for new work in those areas as well. It's great to socialize with your peers and find people that are complementary. And go out on projects together with them.
Absolutely. Sophie has a question, just I think maybe to speak a little bit more to an earlier part of your presentation, where if she's just starting her own freelance business, do you recommend that she or that people restrict their portfolio to what they've done as a freelancer and slowly build it? Or would you also put samples of what you've done as an employee in a certain company?
I would put everything in, yeah. If you've done the work and you're not legally bound on confidentiality, show the work.
Great. Let's see, we have another question. Oh, not another question, just basically a thank you. Carlos is just having to get on another call. We did schedule a little bit more time, so if there's already questions, certainly do pop them into the channel. But I think we've gotten any and all that have already been submitted. Do know that, as with Mark's email, mark@communo.com, is available to certainly consult on a one-on-one basis for a couple more questions here or there. But thank you again, Mark, for a lot of really great tips and insight on really how to make yourself more attractive and viable to the agency world as clients, and to keep that kind of balanced lifestyle as well, capitalizing on all the different tools and resources that are available when you're going out on your own to keep connected and to keep your business funnel full. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Hope everybody enjoyed it.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. We will send invitations out for the next professional development session. This session has been recorded and will be shared with everyone that has registered. And I look forward to connecting with each of you in the future. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye, Brian.